Welcome, my friend, to the On the Blue Line podcast for law enforcement. I am your host, Wayne Mulder, and this is the podcast that helps law enforcement officers overcome the mental health toll of the profession. Why? To become better leaders and protectors on and off the job. This week on the podcast, I sit down with Jerrod Hardy. We talk about selling everything and living in an Airstream. You can't miss that part. And some of the stories that go along with that, you definitely do not want to miss. And why so many of us get paralyzed by analysis, and why we arguably don't need more training. We need better training in law enforcement. The On the Blue Line podcast, it starts now.
'Cause you know it's only gonna get better. Yeah, the seasons know when to change. Better weather don't last forever. Oh, you know things never stay the same.
So welcome back to the podcast. Yes, it's been a while, and yes, I'm going to leave it right there. I apologize. But if you are watching this on YouTube, if you're watching this on Rumble, you're seeing that we do have the temporary studio of the new podcast, essentially long story short, which some other podcasts, probably a morning roll call, go into more detail, but we have since moved to another part near kind of where we lived, but into a 1926 farmhouse. So it's practically new. But it's been quite the experience, and of course, some of the things that come with that to try to get a podcast studio up has been interesting. But we have the temporary studio up and going, and we have some great plans for a longer-term solution for some interview shows we've been wanting to do. So thank you all who continue to reach out, the emails I get, the messages I get, and those of you who continue to listen to episodes. It's been amazing. So thank you so much. The other good news is if you've been following, if you're a long-time listener, finished command school, which was 6 months of my life, doing it for graduate credit. So it was a very long 6 months of my life, but thank God that is over. And now I'm able to get back to concentrating full-time on this podcast again, other than, I say full-time, but that's probably not a true statement. Full-time in that I'm not doing school right now, but I still have all the other responsibilities that so many of us have. So let me tell you about this week's podcast guest. I tell you, I have really enjoyed getting to know Jerrod Hardy. He's got over 21 years of law enforcement experience. He's had, like so many of us, a lot of different assignments: patrol, SWAT, school resource officer, training coordinator, academy coordinator, worked in hiring, recruiting, did some background investigations. But he used these experiences and lessons he learned and his love for coaching and writing to continue to give back to the law enforcement profession. He went on, he's done writing for police1.com, and he has a regular column, The Coach's Corner, in which he talks about defensive tactics and other information that helps both in law enforcement career, but also transitional advice from his experience. He was someone who walked away from law enforcement at a young age, 46 years old, and he loves to share the journey about what he did and how it changed him through his writing, his speaking, his podcasting. And his first book came out in 2019, but it is now also available on Audible. I confirmed that before this released, so you can definitely go to the links in the show notes. And the name of that book is Extraordinary People in Ordinary Places. And as you can imagine, I just love that title, and it's right in line with the message of On the Blue Line. So he's inspiring, positive speaker, writer, and trainer, and he's got years of real-world applicable experience. And quite frankly, I'm just honored to have been able to sit down with him and the conversations we've had offline. Just a phenomenal guy, and someone that I hope we can develop a friendship that goes on for years. So without taking any more time, here is this week's guest, Jerrod Hardy. Well, Jerrod, welcome to the show.
Wayne, thank you for having me. It's an honor, my friend. I appreciate what you're doing for our community and all your listeners out there. And I just tip my hat for you for stepping up and putting yourself out there like this. It's a great testament to your character.
Well, thank you so much. And yeah, it's neat seeing all the different podcasts that are coming out, and just really people in general that are helping people in the law enforcement profession, such as yourself. So the pleasure is mine. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I did some prep work, so I'm ready.
Okay. Well, then let me start as I always do. Coffee or tea, Jerrod?
Not even close. Coffee all day, every day.
You and me both. Every once in a while, maybe a little tea here and there. But are you a black coffee, or do you like that cream and sugar, or how do you like that coffee?
Well, I try to be a little healthier. I'll go a little coconut oil. in there, get some good healthy fats in my coffee, and some cinnamon.
Interesting. Coconut oil, not coconut milk, huh?
No, yeah, I don't like really a lot of the milk stuff. So yeah, a little scoop of coconut oil, a little sprinkle of cinnamon. I'm a happy camper.
Okay. Now, is that coming? That's a new one. I have yet to have anyone say coconut oil in their coffee. Is that essentially like the ones that put butter in it and so forth, where you're trying to get those healthy fats?
Yeah, for sure. But I can, with the coconut oil, you just don't have the dairy aspect of it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So,
very cool.
Yeah, man. I love coffee. I actually did a coffee tour when I was in Costa Rica. I went for like a day to a small family-owned coffee farm and
that
just nerded out on coffee. Yeah, here's a little interesting fact. Did you know coffee beans aren't actually a bean? They're a seed of a fruit.
It seems like I knew that, but not like I could have actually passed a test with that.
Yeah,
interesting.
They're like little grapes almost. Sort of the little farm I went to in Costa Rica, they are actually making coffee wine from the grapes because the juice from the berry just kind of is a byproduct.
Did you try this wine?
Yeah, of course I had to try it, Wayne. I'm in Costa Rica.
And what was the flavor profile? I mean, did it have a typical wine taste, or I'm just thinking bitter?
Yeah, you're right. You're right on with that. I would not drink it.
Okay.
I wouldn't buy it, but I just thought it was cool. They were looking for a way to not have so much waste associated to processing coffee.
Yeah, I think that's awesome.
It's actually the seed of like almost a grape type fruit. Random fact, man. I got a lot of random facts. I'll tell you that.
I love it. That's going to make this very interesting. What's your favorite, or where is your favorite place to have that drink? A place that's peaceful for you?
Man, I live out of my Airstream full time, traveling the country. So my favorite place is right here, watching that sunrise come up from my trailer wherever I'm parked.
Yeah, and we're going to get more into a little bit of that traveling, but that is such a beautiful opportunity. Speaking of traveling, do you have a best or worst travel story?
Best or worst? Well, I'll tell you the most recent one. So my wife and I were pulling into, we love camping for free, right? We're like old school campers. Like you go out to the woods and just find a spot. We don't do a lot of campgrounds. So we pull up in this spot outside Alamogordo, New Mexico. Beautiful. Mountains are right there. It's free camping. It's Bureau of Land Management. We're good to go. I come down this little dirt road and I see something out in front of me. Campers are usually pretty respectful. You mind your piece, I mind mine. Every now and then we'll come over and talk, but we don't go right up on each other. Right. This thing's waving frantically in the road at me. I'm like, what in the hell is going on? And that's the only road in to get back where I need to go. So I keep creeping, get closer and closer. It's a 60-something-year-old dude in a pink thong bikini that appointed himself camp host and thought I should park right next to him. That's the best spot out there. And my wife and I are like, no, this ain't going to work. But now here's what I'll share with you, Wayne.
Okay.
Incredible tan lines on that old man. He had the best tan I've ever seen. Of course, he's wearing a pink thong bikini, so he's going to work.
That I could see where that would work. Yes. In fact, if I ever want to improve my tan lines, I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, and if you're ever out in New Mexico and you're thinking you're going to stay on some Bureau of Land Management property, read the reviews on Camp Pendium so you don't get sidetracked by the pink thong bikini guy.
Okay, I will. This is a good note for everybody listening. I don't even know what to say after that one, Jerrod. Actually, I love that. Do you have a most meaningful modern nonfiction book?
Oh, hands down, man. I will tell you, Green Lights, Matthew McConaughey.
Really? I have yet to read it. I have it on my Audible. In all honesty, I have yet to read it or listen to it.
Literally, it's sitting right next to me. It is. I've probably read this 10 times, and I'll just go back to it and read little snippets. It is a fantastic story of how he became who he is, through his family, through entertaining stories. And if you're an Audible guy, it's super cool to listen there because he actually reads it to you. So you get his accent and his fun storytelling. But yeah, it's not I'm not a big Hollywood fan. I don't really look to Hollywood to lead me in much. But that book is it's a very purposeful, well-written book that'll get you thinking as well as entertain you.
Absolutely. I will definitely. I've heard others say that it's good. No one that I've had on the show, but just like others in my circle that have talked about it. But yeah, I have yet to actually listen to it. So I'll be sure to do that.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I can't recommend it high enough.
Similar to the coffee question, what is the place that brings you the most peace? Where is your favorite spot to just stop, breathe, and enjoy life?
Probably our property up in Wyoming. We call it Naked Acres because when our family bought it, there was no buildings there. It was just a naked 40-acre lot of land. And now we have some cabins. We have a tiny house. Cell phones don't work real well out there.
That's a prerequisite for a good time, Jerrod.
Yeah, it is.
Cell phones not working.
Yeah, no. And it's the most peaceful. Like you're just immersed in nature. So that would be probably my favorite place to go if I just got to sit and unwind.
Now, Naked Acres, that part of Wyoming, does it actually have any trees on this acreage, or is it just wide open?
You know, man, Wyoming gets a bad rap because of kind of people drive through it on I-80, which goes east to west straight across through the plains, and it's very flat and windy. But we're actually up. We're 9 miles in from South Dakota, so we're actually in the Black Hills, like Sturgis, Devil's Tower. So it's a very spiritual area, very good energies if you're into that stuff. But no, we have mountains, trees. It's nice.
It's awesome. Yeah, we were talking a little bit about that offline. It is funny you say that when you talk on the south side there coming out of like Cheyenne, because when the first time we went to Wyoming, first of a couple trips we've made there, like we were talking about, we stopped at a rest area, or not really a rest area, it's a welcome center when you first come into the state. And we were talking to the older couple that was working the desk. And we had talked about, much like you and I did, and it's no secret to my listeners that my intention is to end up in Wyoming. And we had this conversation, and she was like, yeah, most people only make it like 3 to 4 years, and then they head back because of the wind in that southern part of the state that just is relentless.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And you know, I raised my family in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is 45 minutes south of Cheyenne on the same interstate. And the weather difference just in that area is unbelievable. Like in Fort Collins, we'd have 50 degrees and sunny days, and Cheyenne would be in a blizzard.
Really? Yeah,
it's high. Like people don't realize like Cheyenne's higher than Denver. Like it's more than a mile high. Elevation
I realize that.
Elevation's a ticket, man. You got to pay attention to your elevation. That's going to tell you a lot about your weather.
Okay. Very good to know. And I like that Fort Collins area. We actually stopped there one of the trips when we were headed back to Denver, because obviously we usually fly in there. Yeah. So all that being said, let's start with your origin story. It's my understanding you spent a little time in the Air Force as well. So wherever you kind of want to start.
Yeah, I did 4 years in the Air Force. Funny story, dude. It's this will tell you just how I live my life and how I ended up selling all my stuff and living in an Airstream traveling. Is I went to college and played baseball. I had no plan B. My whole life, I was going to be a professional baseball player. That's all I was going to do. My dad was career Air Force, so I grew up on Air Force bases, so I was familiar with it. And then probably about halfway through my sophomore year in junior college, I realized I wasn't good enough. Like it just hit me like, man, these guys are just better than me. Like I'm not playing as much as I wanted. I'm just not going to be a pro. Like it's not in my cards. So I went to the cafeteria. I ordered lunch. I was sitting there and there was an Air Force recruiter, like a couple tables down, minding his business. I was like, I'm going to do that. And I just walked over. I was like, well, how long would it take me to go? And he's like, well, when do you graduate? I was like, well, I'll have my 2-year degree in May and I want to go right away. Next thing I know, I was taking the test, signed up, and was leaving. And I just called my mom. I was like, hey, I'm not going to be back for summer like I thought I might. She's like, oh, what happened? You're not playing baseball? I was like, nah, I joined the Air Force. And away I went.
You're kind of a spontaneous guy, I'm guessing.
Yeah, my wife, here's what I'll tell you, Wayne, is I don't get paralyzed by analysis.
It's a good thing.
And that's one of the things I think hinders our society nowadays is we're always looking for more information. I need this to be just right and that to be just right. And maybe I should do a little more, but I'm a leaper. Like I just go because I like to make mistakes and I like to learn.
Yeah.
And so, I don't play life real safe. And so I ended up in the Air Force, and law enforcement was one of my top jobs off the ASVAB test. And I was like, well, that sounds like kind of cool. That was how I became. I wasn't one of those guys that grew up always wanting to be a cop. I didn't play cops when I was kids. Like it just was like, hey, they say I'll be good at this. They must know what I'm supposed to do, so I'll try it.
Very cool. Yeah, I wasn't one of these that grew up saying I was going to be a cop either. In fact, I wasn't for many years. I was a landscaper. So were you only in the Air Force then the 4 years and just one tour of duty and then went into law enforcement?
Well, I went back to college because I was like, well, maybe I'll try college again. Went back, still didn't my jam. And then a local police department was hiring. I was like, I'm going to go give this thing a whirl. And then, I did 21 years.
Wow. Now, was this out west also?
I started in Montana, the Butte Silver Bow Sheriff's Department, Police Department, Consolidated Government. And then I did 4 years there. And then I went to Fort Collins Police in northern Colorado for the last 17.
Butte is a consolidated government, like a metro?
Yeah, I guess sheriffs. Well, because there's not enough tax base, to be honest. So they couldn't really support a sheriff's department and a police department. And so they consolidated back in the late 70s, I think. So it's a Butte Silver Bow joint government.
Interesting. That's different.
Familiar with Butte?
I'm familiar with the area, but what really struck me is that usually when you think of metro governments, it's these giant it's Miami, it's Louisville, it's, these. So to hear that they consolidated them together, I find interesting.
Yeah, and that's kind of a thing in Montana. Like Anaconda Deer Lodge is consolidated, and that's even smaller than Butte.
Okay. So what kind of roles did you hold throughout your time in law enforcement? I know we all kind of do all sorts of things, but.
So I did, obviously, patrol. I was on the SWAT team in both places for a while. I was a school resource officer in Fort Collins. And I ran our in-service training for a while. And then the job I loved the absolute most, the school resource officer I really liked. And then the last 8 years of my career, I ran our academy. And that's kind of where I found, okay, what am I going to do after police work? It was through coaching the recruits through their training.
Was your academy, that was in Colorado?
Yeah.
Was your academy agency specific, or is it similar to Wyoming where they all go to one post-certified?
Right. Yeah, no, Colorado has a bunch of academies. Some bigger agencies have their own. Fort Collins now has its own, but while I was still there, we were sending them to a state academy down near Denver. And then I would get them back. So I'd supervise them there, and then they'd come back, and then we'd do another in-house academy on top of it. So our training program was almost a full year, including field training.
Wow. Now, they didn't live there, though. That was something where they would just come for a period of time.
They commuted back and forth, yeah.
Okay, very good. So what were your thoughts on training? I'm assuming that probably led to what you're doing now a little bit, right? What were you seeing as some of the big issues or things that we needed to instill in these new recruits, people coming into the profession?
Coaching. We weren't coaching them, right? And so here, let me tell you this. So one of the goals I set for myself is I love mixed martial arts, and I was older, right? Like I didn't get into it until my 30s, and then I wanted to fight, and I wanted to see if I could do it. So I did my first mixed martial arts fight at 42 years old.
Wow.
In a cage at a big arena, sold a bunch of tickets to raise money for charity. It was super awesome. But that's where it really hit me of where we were dropping the ball, right? And so to get ready for that fight, I knew what weight I had to be. I knew what night the fight was going to take place. I knew what time I'd be getting in the cage. I knew my opponent. I could look up my opponent. I could see who coached him. I had all this stuff that I knew. Yet I would say 90% of my training with my coach, I was fortunate to be with a world champion that coached me, was mental. Yeah. I did my skills. I did my running. I did my jiu-jitsu and wrestling and boxing. But then he always coached my mental side and like pushing me to believe and to not want to give up when things got hard, but go further and further. And then I started thinking like, wait a second, because I journaled all this and I wrote a nice blog and I would share my stories. And I started thinking, why are we not doing this for cops? Like cops don't know when the bad guy's going to be there. They don't know how big or small the bad guy's going to be. They don't know what time of day the fight's going to take place. But we just have to know that they have to have this sort of skills, this set of skills. At some point in their life, they may use it, or a lot of cops will go through their whole career and never use it.
Yeah.
But
and
we
thank God, but yeah.
For sure. But why am I in my police training? Am I spending 90% on physical skills and only 10 on mindset? But my sport training, where there's rules, a referee that can save me, I can tap out whenever I want. I'm not going to die, is 90% mental and 10% physical. So that's when I started looking. I was like, no, I got to change this. I'm going to coach cops like I would coach fighters. And I'm going to coach cops to believe. in themselves and to believe in the skills and to know the skills work and have answers. Okay, if this doesn't work, I can do this. Not what I saw all around the country, which is more fear-based, or reactionary, and all skills but no heart. Right? Because that's I need you to perform. Right? You need my coach needs me to perform that night in the cage to validate him as a coach. And as I was like, what if I take that mindset to police training? And when I coach police officers, it's not about checking off, did you get the attendance sheet done? It's not about checking off, did you see the outline? It's about, no, wait a second. When I coach Wayne, and 6 months from now, Wayne goes out and uses these skills professionally, tactically, within law and policy and ethics, and does a great job. That's how I know I did my job.
Yeah.
It's not the outline. It's not the attendance sheet. What if I bring that mindset and I was like, you know what? I'm going to start my own company. And again, not a ton of research. I didn't do market analysis. I didn't get angel investors. I was like, no, I just believe I can do this. So in 2016, I put together my Team Hardy ground tactics coaching course and started going around the country teaching cops to coach students, not just train them on skills.
Okay. So the mental component of it was there in the training program that you put together?
For sure. Yeah. So I would say, and if you read the reviews of stuff, you'll see like people are like, man, the skills are great, but it's the belief.
Yeah.
He believes in us and we believe in ourselves and we believe in our students. Right? It's the spirit of it is what the difference.
Yeah.
Right. I would, law enforcement right now, people that aren't in, a lot of times will be like, police need more training. We need more training. And I would argue a lot of times we don't need more. We need better.
Interesting.
Right. We need better training that we believe in, training that gives us the results we're after, not just that we sit through to say we went through to check off some liability.
Yeah. And sadly, we've both seen so much of that.
For sure, because we're letting policy. It's being driven by people that aren't after the outcomes, right? And so that was kind of how I started this whole next venture in life.
I love that phrase that you talk about where you're moving away from fear-based training towards confidence-based coaching. Can you go a little further into that dichotomy? Because I really think that really struck me when I was prepping for this interview.
Yeah.
That so much of what we do really is based. In fact, today, my morning roll call was all on this idea of don't be safe, right? It isn't that I don't want people to be safe, but obviously we get so ingrained in this safety focus that it becomes fear-based. So I would love to hear a little more of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, 100%. I listened to it. That was a great point you said. Let's quit being safe and let's accept the risk we have to take and manage the risk.
Yes.
Right. And respect it. And we are so fear adverse.
Right.
That fear is a bad word. And I'm like, so one of the first talks I do at the class is I'm like, fear. I put it up on the board. Let's talk about fear. Let's get it out in the open. What are you afraid of today? And I tell them, I go, hey, here's what I'm afraid of. You won't buy into my tactics. Me and you don't mesh. I can't make you better. I let you down. I'm afraid of that. What are you afraid of? And everybody talks about their fears. And I'm like, okay, now that they're on the board, we all got them in the open, and we see that we all have these same fears, let's coach to them. Let's make ourselves better.
I love that. Absolutely.
Right, because why? Everybody comes to a class with fear. And it's the funny thing about cops is, what do they fear most? They don't fear bad guys. They don't fear suspects on the street most of the time. They fear each other. They fear judgment. They fear failure. They fear getting hurt. Yeah. So let's get it out in the open. Now you'll see, I'm not the only one. So
on
now
day one, they fear talking.
Right. So now you can talk about it. Now Wayne has come to us and say, hey, coach, I was afraid of this. Oh, cool. Guess what? 8 other people are afraid of it too. Let's talk about, you're afraid of getting taken to the ground and getting your gun taken away. Perfect. I'm going to give you 2 or 3 techniques that if you get taken to the ground, you'll retain your weapon. You know what I mean? Like, instead of being afraid of that and saying like, if this happens, it's really, really bad. Like, the odds are you're going to die. No. I don't want to teach that. If that's the odds, what are the odds that I'm going to win? That's what I'm going to teach.
I love that.
That's what I want us believing in. And, here's a story I'll tell you and this is the one where I was like, okay, I know what I'm doing is working. Because I talk about coaching and I talk about believing and I talk about inspiring. And there's a lot of cops out there that are too tough. They're hard, right? Like we're cynical and they're like, oh, that shit don't work. Like it's not going to work. You know, I don't need to believe anymore. Here's my story of how I know this works, Wayne.
Okay.
We had it. I went to a state academy to supervise the recruits I had down there. I had 7 at the time. 3 were females. They're doing ground tactics at the state level, which is a little different than what I teach. It's a little more watered down. It's an academy, right? So I watch as they break and the class goes, and it's 2 instructors for about 40 students. Terrible ratio, which is traditional. Yep. And I watch as off on one side, the guys that are really into this get going, and they're going hard, way too fast for the skill level. And I watched that my 3 lady officers go to the other corner with another group of lady officers from other agencies, and they're not really doing much. And I watch, where do the instructors go? Well, where do the instructors go?
They're probably over helping them.
Over to the guys, right? Because the guys are getting it. They're flowing. They're after it. And my ladies are doing a rep or 2, and they're looking around like, I don't know. Did I do it right? I don't know. So I go interrupt. I go, hey, can I work with the ladies? You teach whatever you want. I will teach what you teach, but I'm going to take the ladies under my wing. I'm going to just coach them. So I do it one day. A couple years later, one of the lady officers decides to come to our agency from the agency she was with. I get assigned her background. I know her a little bit, do her background, nothing spectacular. I think we get along fine. Well, then she comes through our training program. I coach her like I coach everybody. Good to go. 2 years later, she's driving on a call and she sees a neighboring agency's a university cop pulled over on the side of the road with his lights going. Weird, right? Like he shouldn't be there. So she slows down. She's running code to her own call. She slows down, looks over, he's retreating backwards. And there's a lady with a knife coming after him. She spins her car around, parks between them, jumps out, tactically moves towards him, shoots, puts rounds on target of the person with the knife.
Wow.
About 4:00 in the morning, I get a call from her. Here's what she says, Wayne. Here's what she tells me. She says, Jerrod, I just want to thank you for all your coaching. It was your voice I heard step by step through that process.
Wow.
Now, here's where it gets good, Wayne. Here's how I know coaching cops works. Guess what? I never taught her
anything to do with actually returning fire.
I never spent one single solitary second anywhere near her on a shooting range. Never.
Yeah, because you mentioned you were in a gym. I didn't think you did.
I didn't teach her driving. I didn't teach her call response. I taught her defense. I taught her to win her fights with her hands and to be slick.
Yeah.
And to believe in herself. So in the moment of truth where she's saving a life, she's not hearing the firearms coach or the driving instructor. She heard me because I helped her start to believe in herself. So when people tell me like cops need tough training and they need hard training, I a lot of times I'll say, no, wait a second. We need to get to cops' hearts again.
Yeah.
And their minds. The skills are there. We just got to get them to believe in themselves and to believe that we're teaching real skills.
Absolutely. That is a powerful, powerful story. And I would think that maybe one of the key elements of it, and this is just my anecdotal thoughts on it, but because of the role that mindset takes in these types of incidents, whether we're talking going hands-on or a shooting incident and so forth, by you coaching to that environment, I mean, I guess what I'm likening it to is, whenever you go to any of these mindset type classes or whatever, it's all about that almost centering effect, that ability to breathe in the moment, when the world is chaos around you. And I really think by focusing on that, it helps in all areas of life. It doesn't specifically have to be a use of force incident. It doesn't have to be a shooting, but that ability that she was able to get from your class where she was able to calm down in that moment and just make, just really default to her training. But it all came down to mindset.
You're 100% right. But it goes just like you said, Wayne. You can't coach somebody to believe themselves in training and that belief doesn't carry over to their life.
Yeah.
Right? You can't coach them to see opportunity and then that they don't go home and see opportunity for their kids, right? Like that's what I'm saying. Like when we get a chance to train police officers, we're training their families. We're trying to make them better people.
Yeah.
Right? Because we all know the divorce rate's ridiculous, alcoholism's ridiculous, suicide's ridiculous. So why is that? Because we spend so much time on techniques and tactics and things and not enough time on people's hearts.
Yeah. I would agree 100%.
That's what I like to do, man. Like I like to have real conversations and challenge police stereotypes, police mythology, and ideas that we can only be police officers. Because there's so much more to us. There was more to you before you got that job. There should definitely be a lot to you when you leave that job.
And I would even argue that a lot of your best law enforcement officers are the ones that take those skill sets and who they were before the job and implement them into this career. You know, I know when I first came in this career, I kind of felt like, because a lot of the guys that were coming through the academy with me were guys that had military experience or they had all these life skills, and most of mine had been service-based. I had worked at Kmart when I was quite young, ran a landscape company and so forth. What I didn't realize then, it wasn't until I went through the academy, that those soft skills, that ability to communicate with people, to work in a service-based environment, are absolutely what makes some of the best law enforcement officers, because they understand that essential part of working with people, but then even like you're saying, that internal ability to, a high emotional intelligence also plays a big role in their success in this career.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I think that's important nowadays, that when we hire people, we hire them from all walks of life.
Yeah.
Right. And not just a certain, this is our stereotypical, this is the recruit we want. We need to hire across the board, because you're absolutely right. And I would always say this, give me a sandwich artist at Subway.
Yep.
They can become a police officer if they're good at interpersonal communication, handling conflict, multitasking, following orders, showing, right? Like there's skills there that I can work with.
Absolutely. And in some ways, I think, well, like you said, I think that pulling from all these various areas is what makes forces strong, because they really are, or should be, a picture of the community in which they serve from the standpoint of differences of opinions and life experiences. The more that you have, the stronger the unit's going to be. I don't want an entire agency of people like me. Nobody wants that.
But see, now here's the flip side. Here's the flip side to that, Wayne. We say we want to recruit across the community lines, like all different people should be able to come into our agency. But then what is the habit we have? What do we tend to do when we get them in the doors?
Well, we do essentially boil them down. Like,
we box them in.
This is how we want you to be. You've got to fit within this box.
Right. When's the last time you got approached within the agency to be like, hey, I want you to get creative for a second. Yeah. Problem solve this. Hey, I saw your background in this. Think outside police work and give me an idea on this. Right. Like it's so funny, right? And that used to drive me nuts when we'd recruit these people in. And then you check on them 2 years down the road, and their shift supervisor wants them all doing the same thing. So many tickets, so many calls. Like we want everybody to be the same.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's part of, I think, the evolution of law enforcement that we could learn better from small business is managing our talent a little better. Right. Oh. Not every cop has to be exactly the same. It's that uniqueness that makes us better.
Absolutely. I mean, we all like the statement, 100 years of tradition uninterrupted by progress, which very much is law enforcement. However, do you think that's a leadership failure, what you're describing? Because I would think that the answer to that not only lies in the culture of the agency as a whole, but so just last week I was in FBI LEDA classes, and this was kind of one of the conversations that was bouncing around is, really those frontline sergeants and corporals are where these kind of things start. Like when you talk about thinking outside the box, and because a lot of times you get these guys in that role that, and we're fortunately seeing a change, but 10, 15 years and they're cynical and, the agency's out to get me kind of thinking. And then that is the ones where you're seeing where they're creating these boxes for those under their command. So would you agree that that is a leadership issue, or do you think it's a culture issue, or what do you think?
I think it goes back to your roll call today. being safe. If I'm leading people and my only goal is to not get in trouble by the person above me, my only goal is to not disrupt them.
Yeah.
Why I lead with fear, right? I lead with, I don't want to get any questions asked of me up there. So I want you guys to just play it safe down here. Right. Like I think the fear manifests itself in so many ways, but within leadership, it really hinders creativity. It hinders problem solving and progress. So I would say it's the same thing that we've been talking about, in that we are so risk adverse. We are so negative media attention. We're so afraid of getting something wrong that we play it so safe, and then nobody thrives, right? Nobody's challenged, right? What you talk about that? Talk about, why do police officers get disgruntled? Why do police officers tend to become cynical?
Yeah,
I would say a lot of times we're not challenging them,
right? They don't, or they don't feel like their voice holds any weight or they get a vote in anything, which is very much in line with what you're describing. It's that whole risk adverse thinking. Yeah,
absolutely. Right. And I think that permeates a lot of our society, professionally, parenting. If we'll leave our law enforcement job to go pursue our true passion, we're just very risk averse right now. We try to hide from as much risk as possible, when the reality is law enforcement is a very risky business and it needs courageous people.
Yes. Amen.
Right. I need courageous leaders. I need courageous followers.
Yeah. I would agree with that 100%. Let me ask you, kind of continuing down this road just one step further, you talk a little bit about training that is tailored to the political climate that we're currently in. Is that kind of very much in line with what we're talking about here? Or do you go a different step when you talk about tailoring it to the political climate?
Like for my training?
Yeah. So one of the videos that I came across that you were talking about having the training tailored specifically to the political climate. What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by that is, like, Colorado has a bunch of goofy Senate bills.
Colorado's got a bunch of goofy bills in general.
Yeah, that just came out. So cops can't have hands anywhere near necks. Yeah. Because they're choking. Even though they're not, most of the time they're not choking. So, like, what I can say is I'll bring ground tactic skills to you that keep your hands away from the neck but let you escape, right? Like, that's what I'm saying. I'm tailoring. Like, I'll tailor to whatever limits you have. Or I'll tailor to, if you only have 4 hours of in-service training for the year, let's make a really good training. Yeah. Right. I don't. Here's ultimately what you said it this morning when I listened to your show. The community wants, and I'm going to throw out a word that people are like, oh, you can't say that word anymore. And I call bullshit. The community wants warriors as police officers. Yes. Right. What is a warrior? A warrior is physically prepared, mentally sharp for battle, has the tools and the confidence. But a warrior also protects their flock. They protect the people. Yep. Right? Nobody wants to call the cops, dial 911 at 3 a.m. and have some cop show up that's asking them questions about what they should do, that's unsure of themselves or their training. Yep. Right. But that's what we're doing. We're creating more doubt through a lot of our training. We're creating training scars of so much liability and paperwork and, oh my God, all this and that happens if this happens. So now I don't even want to do it. Yeah. That we're losing the point of when the community calls us, they should know we're ready. And that means we're ready for everything. We're ready to serve, to listen, to solve problems. We're also ready to win fights if that's what it takes. Absolutely. Right. And we can't be so soft that we have none of these skills or that we're so specialized. Right. Yeah. No, it's huge. And it is, like you said, you just say the word like warrior and people roll their eyes, but at the end of the day, that's what they want. I mean, it was kind of that illustration that I don't remember if I'd gotten it from Wild at Heart or some organization, but that whole statement about, you castrate the gelding, but bid him be fruitful. But it's true. We want this safe, gentle animal, but we want the benefits that come from the stallion. And the same is true in any of these other metaphors, whether we're talking sheepdogs or we're talking, whatever metaphor you want to use. And yeah, sadly, I think people yearn for it. You're seeing it, right? Like people want authentic masculinity. And I'm not talking,
the negative stereotypes of masculinity. I'm talking about authentic masculinity, and you know the difference. So I think that there's a huge point here that people want it, but people are scared to articulate it. But go on.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Here's what I'll tell you is in my classes on the mats, right, is we go 3 days to get certified to coach, and it's a hard 3 days. We work out a lot. We learn a lot of good techniques and stuff, and we train hard because police work should require sweat. Police work should require a challenge. If I go to training and I don't break a sweat and I just spent 4 hours learning how to fight the most violent people in our society, but I didn't sweat, I didn't maybe get my heart rate up to go, ooh, I got to get back in shape a little bit. I didn't realize none of that. I'm lying to you, right? I'm not training you. I'm checking boxes. So I push people. I will make you better because we're going to sweat. Some of you are going to puke. I literally just got an email from a guy that registered again for his second time in this coming spring. And he's like, Coach, I promise I'll bring an extra shirt in case I puke this year. I'm like, dude, I'm down with it. Yeah. Because why is he coming back? Because I actually make him work. Yeah. But here's what I'll tell you. When we end on that Friday afternoon, our last talk is what I call Be Thy Brother's Keeper. And we talk about what does that truly mean? It means, here's a 4-letter word you don't hear a lot that I think should be in more police training. We love each other. And because I love you, I'll say, hey, Wayne, I noticed you haven't shown up to work out in the last 4 months. What's going on, buddy? Or, hey, I'm going to have real conversations with you. Yeah. And I'm actually going to not let you isolate yourself to where none of us want to talk to you anymore, but I'm actually going to pull you back into the fold and go, hey, Wayne, what's going on? Let's talk. Right? Because the skills are great, but caring about each other, truly actually caring about one another who's willing to die alongside you. Yet we tease them because they say this instead of that in the reports. We make fun of them for this mistake they made as a rookie. Now here it is 15 years later and they still can't get rid of that nickname that eats at them. Right? Like we can be better. And that's what I love, Wayne, is my program and hanging out with me and coming to these classes. I don't need nobody else to change. I don't need the president to change. I don't care who's in office. I don't care what Senate bills they write. Because if we decide to believe in ourselves and believe in those around us and truly care within our organizations, law enforcement will be much better regardless of what those people do.
Oh, you are so right. It's funny, or interesting, I guess would be a better word. When I was in that training last week that I was referring to, the FBI LEDA classes, one of the things so this was primarily supervisors, so sergeant and above for the most part. There may have been a couple exceptions, but everyone that I was aware of was either a sergeant on up to captain. And the people and everyone would talk about their favorite or their most meaningful supervisors that they've had throughout their career. And it always came down to the point that you're making right there. It always came down to someone who they knew cared about them. But then what's interesting is when you flip that coin on the other side, how often are we being the ones that are making sure that is how those under our command and those that we're working with feel that way, and expanding it to just those in our circle, those we work with, maybe, of equal rank. How important is this when we talk about mental health and, in stopping the stigma and smashing the stigma and all this very important stuff that's literally could save lives comes down to what you just said. It's this whole idea of brother's keeper, loving somebody in the sense that I genuinely care about you and I'm going to prefer you more than myself. And what can I do to lift you up? I mean, it's so powerful. What do you think are the barriers to it? What do you think? Why do you think it isn't more the norm and rather it's more the exception at this point?
I think that's interesting. I'll tell you my career. So I started law enforcement in 1997 and I saw a huge shift after September 11th, 2001. Yeah. And NYPD certainly deservedly stepped to the forefront as national leaders in policing, right? Based on the heroic actions of the law enforcement and fire departments at that time. But the negative that I saw that came with it is NYPD was huge on comp stat and statistics. Remember, they were coming off the 80s, you know, with the crack in the 90s, with crack cocaine and crime, and they had really ramped down on crime, and it was all data.
Yep.
Do you remember, like, Bernard Carrick was on all the national TV shows, and he would talk about, we have these meetings, and if this lieutenant shift has more burglaries than this lieutenant, we're replacing them.
Yep.
Well, that's to me where it changed, right? And here's the example I would share with any leadership I speak to is, you and I go on a call, or we're the same shift, Wayne. We work the same shift. And you go on a call of a 16-year-old out of control. Parents just need parenting advice. Well, you raise kids, man. You got this. So you go and you spend a good hour and you talk to the parents about some tips. You give them resources in your community. You let them know, man, I've been there. Let me tell you what worked for me. You talk to the 16-year-old and go, hey, I've been there too. And I fought with my parents and I know what you're going through, right? You spend an hour. And at the end of that hour, that family loves you because you gave them time. Yeah. But in that hour, Wayne, I wrote 4 speeding tickets. I didn't take the time to know nobody. I wrote them and cut them as fast as I can. Well, maybe that's the last hour of our shift. So now we go back to our headquarters or office, whatever you go to turn in your paperwork, however you do it. And the Sarge is there, right? And the Sarge sees me. I got 4 tickets, 4 pissed off people that are going to call him in the morning, but 4 tickets. You got nothing, but you got a family that's happy, that had results, that is like, man, Wayne's the kind of cop we need more of.
Yeah.
So externally, the community, who do they want? Me or you? They want you.
Yep.
But as soon as we walk in the doors and I got my 4 tickets, internally, who's being rewarded?
Yep. The one who has the stats.
Me, even though I didn't provide the very service we said we were going to provide. That's, to me, what started changing. We became about numbers and response times and cutting minutes off of this. And can I put, 2 more people here to make that right? We're playing pieces. We're things.
Yeah.
We lost the humanity of the people behind the badge, right? When if I get to lead you, I should probably know, hey, how old are your kids? What's your wife do? Like, I should know more than just you.
Yes.
Because I impact your entire family.
Wow. So that is probably one of the best illustrations and conversation pieces that I've had around what you just explained. There is exactly the disconnect when administrators are like, we really want to be behavioral health focused. We want to have a behavioral health unit. We want to deal with people in mental health crisis. But that misunderstanding is exactly the issue, because oftentimes what makes those units work is time. It comes down to how long can you spend? And I get it. If it's your frontline patrol that's going out there, you may only have 2 or 3 guys on the road. And there can be issues, and I see the bigger picture as well. But what you described is exactly it. It's kind of the disconnect between what we say we want, which is that approach, that relationship approach, I guess is a way to put it, as opposed to that statistic approach, which, like you said, upsets people. Those people that got the 4 tickets are the ones that are always commenting on my social media, as I'm sure they probably are yours as well. So I really, that's probably one of the best descriptions. And I would encourage anyone that's listening to this podcast, especially if you're in an admin role, that really describes well that disconnect between what is required if we're really going to go into some of these behavioral health, mental health focused approaches to law enforcement. So I love that, Jerrod.
Well, thank you. And I'll just add one thing. Who gets caught in the middle? The line level officers, right? Because I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't spend the time on the community side, they're mad. I don't have the relationship. They're mad.
Yeah.
But if I spend too much time over there, I don't have the stats, and now I'm getting pressure from inside the agency. So I'm caught in the middle of, okay, which way do I go here? And that's, as we talk about going back to relationship building, yes, you're right. That's a big thing around the nation, right? Mental health teams and taking time to talk suicidal people out and stuff. We got to make sure that what we're putting out message-wise externally is reinforced behaviorally inside the agency, right? Because it's unfair to continue to put the cops in between the two to where they can't win. I can't win within the community. I can't win within my agency. Right. Yep. And that's where you get that disgruntlement, that cynicalism, the turnover rate.
Yep. They feel they can't win. So they just It's human nature. If I feel like I can't please anybody, then I'm just going to stop. I'm going to just be like, you know what? The heck with both of you then, or whatever the situation may be.
Which is what we see, right? Why is, a lot of places crime rates are rising. Well, what is that? Well, cops aren't taking proactive chances anymore. We've legislated down proactive policing to where, like, why would I in Colorado go out and contact somebody that might be up to no good?
Yeah. And
risk my own financial well-being? Because I don't know if you've seen one of the Senate bills in Colorado is officers can be responsible for, I think, the first $20,000 personally of any wrongful lawsuit.
Well, I was about to ask, am I correct in saying Colorado was one of them that did away with qualified immunity as well? That was...
They still have it, but they changed the language of it.
Okay.
So it put more risk on the individual officers now, more liability.
Wow.
Right. So why now, if I'm not supported inside my agency, now maybe I'm going to look for a new career. Maybe I'm going to start looking to a new state.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And so I don't say that to scare people. Like, I love law enforcement. It's been great for me and my family. But what I'd say to wrap all that up is, it's nobody else's job to change our profession if we won't change it within ourselves.
That is well said.
Right. Yep. It doesn't matter which president we have, which party's in power, who wins the Senate race, when they finally count the votes, who wins whatever. If we are the same inside to our own agency, nothing's changing.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. And I think like all the points that we've touched on, with stronger leadership, dealing with stronger interpersonal relationships and truly caring about the people we work with, caring about the communities we serve, all those, like you said, if we make those the focus, then it changes everything for the career. Let's, since we're getting a little short on time here, let's switch gears to what you've been doing. Obviously, the listeners are going to be able to put together that you are a great public speaker and definitely have a podcast, but tell us a little bit about that. I'd also like to know a little bit more. We keep talking about the training you do. Is that on site? Explain that a little bit as well.
Yeah. So no, I travel the country training. Agencies will bring me in, and then we'll open it up to surrounding agencies. And I niche down. I only focus on the ground tactics. I call it ground tactics because I don't believe cops should be ground fighting in any facet of the world, right? We're tacticians. It means if we get stuck on the ground, we should be able to utilize our options, firearms, OC, TASE, whatever. We're tactically sound, right? We're making decisions based on what's taking place. So I have a coaching program. I'll come in and 3 days long, people get certified to teach my program to their agency.
Okay.
So we've been doing that since 2016. It's super awesome. I just love the relationships that I have with the coaches around the country. And then this year in 2023, we're launching a new program called the Tactician, which is for smaller rural agencies that maybe don't have the training staff to send somebody to get certified to coach, but they want the training. We'll actually I'll come in and bring a couple of my coaches with us, and we'll provide the training to the agency at the line level.
Oh, okay. And then your other one is more of like a train the trainer kind of thing?
It is. It's a certification program. Yep. So I like to think of it as train the trainer, defensive tactics, field training, all coming together because they learn how to coach. They learn how to give feedback, and they learn how to do the skills. So in those 3 days, basically, I'll teach them how to do, say, a weapon retention technique. They'll rep it out as students, and then we'll come back, and I'll say, now I'm going to teach you how you coach this. And then they go out in small groups, and they actually coach each other for a while, and then they deliver feedback. Because the ultimate goal is they go back to their agency, and they coach their officers on how to not only do the program, but the skills and the beliefs that go behind it and the mindset.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let me, as we segue into your podcast and other things you've got going on, what does living on purpose mean to you?
Knowing what the hell I'm doing and why I'm doing it and what it's all for, right? I am shocked at how many people don't have the results they want in life, but when you ask them, what do you really want? They're like, well, I don't know. Well, how are you going to get it if you don't know? Right? Like I have a clear purpose is, I don't know how far back you want to go, but my mom had me when she was 16. And a lot of people said she shouldn't keep me, abortion, adoption, all the cases. And my mom kept me. And me and my mom have been very close my whole life. And one of my favorite childhood memories was being in a room and there was a bunch of birthday cakes there. And I didn't know. I just remember it was a great birthday. I had all these cakes. And it wasn't until much later in my adult life, I asked my mom, I was like, hey, tell me, why did I have so many cakes that year? She's like, well, you were in the GED class with me and all these single moms made you cakes. Right? I was going to school with my mom. So my purpose is this, Wayne. I have to do something every day that my mom didn't get to do because she chose to keep me. Because she kept me, her life was drastically different than maybe the life she thought she was going to have. Yeah. So that means my purpose is to do something that she didn't get to do. That at the end of her time, when I sit and I go, Mom, you can go to the lights, but I got life. She never regrets it.
Wow.
But you got to have a purpose, right? And so that's how the On Purpose podcast came up. Ironically, some of my cop friends were like, hey, dude, you're not going to be here to teach classes anymore. And like, because I did a lot of leadership speaking and stuff. And they're like, how do we hear you? Create a podcast. I was like, all right. And that's just kind of how I live. When I was like, oh, I'll create a podcast. And now here it is coming 4 years later, almost 200 episodes, just like you. It's all about living with purpose. And I share stories of people that have found purpose and how they got to it, what they're doing to live within it, and how do they share it to the world.
Yeah. No, and it's great. And definitely I want the listeners to check it out, which of course I'll have all that in the show notes.
Thank you.
One other quick thing I just want to touch on is your book, because I haven't had a chance to read it, but I love the name of it, Extraordinary People in Ordinary Places.
Thank you.
What can they expect out of that?
Well, it's funny you say that because you're an Audible guy. I'm literally just finished doing it to Audible. It's been out in written format for 3 years. And so I've just finished an Audible. So my goal is to have it ready for Audible by the holidays. What do you expect is it is what it is. Extraordinary people in ordinary places that impacted my life, how they impacted it, and questions at the end of each chapter to get you reflecting on, hey, wait a second. There's somebody like that in my life. And just like you talked about with your dad's episode, like if you're lucky enough to still have your parents alive, maybe you should give them a call. Maybe you should say, I love you one more time. Right. Yeah. And it's stuff like that because I wasn't the best kid growing up. And there's a lot of places my life could have took different turns if ordinary people didn't play an extraordinary role and guide me. And that's I just wanted to share that as a tribute to them. Yeah.
Well, that's what I love about it. And I saw that as a collection of short stories, and I definitely want to encourage the listeners to check it out. And I may wait for the Audible book, but I will definitely check it out.
The Audible book was fun because I did like bonus stuff that I couldn't really put in the book. So like at the end of each chapter, I do like a bonus and be like, well, there's more to the story. Like here's some additional details. And it's funny though, like here's what I would tell you, Wayne, is I took no formal writing classes. I have a junior college degree. I'm not the smartest guy in the world by any means. So when I read my own book back, I'm like, oh, I could have wrote that so much better. I'd have said this different. But you don't have to wait to be perfect to get moving in life.
Yeah.
And you just got to go sometimes.
Which is a powerful lesson. And really for the last hour that I've got to sit here with you, that's probably the biggest takeaway that I've taken. And I hope the listeners do as well. Because I am a paralysis by analysis guy all day long. I try to fight it, but I am.
So what you took away from this guy's completely average. I can do it. That's a great message. Like honestly, if people look at me and they're like, hey, this dude could do it, I can do it, then I've done my job here, Wayne.
I don't think that's exactly what I said, Jerrod, but we'll go with that. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Let me ask you, two questions. First of all, what's next for you and your mission?
Next for me and my missions to have a great 2023, just really getting out and add more agencies. I think we're at like 50 some agencies around the country that teach our program. So I want to keep adding to that because our men and women that are serving on the streets need real training that they can believe in, that their family can believe in, and that gets them home every night, right? Like no bullshit training, no kung fu stuff that hasn't worked since the 70s that we're still just checking boxes, but real good training. And then the podcast is taking on its own life. So I'm actually going to start a workshop series in January called Unbury Your Life.
Oh, great.
Based off of a pretty cool poem by Matthew Arnold called The Buried Life. It was written in the 1850s. that talks about, as your life goes, where did your life really go? And our life kind of gets buried under all the things that come at us. And then we get to the end of life. And we're like, wait a second, this wasn't the life I was supposed to live. It was way back over there. So I want to start those. We're going to do small group workshops. The Januaries will be online. And then I'm probably going to have some in-person stuff in the summer, maybe even out in Wyoming, where people come in and we really start peeling away some of the excuses, some of the layers, some of the reasons why we're not living the most purposeful life we could before it's too late and we end up with a ton of regrets.
I think that's powerful. I will absolutely keep an eye on that, and I'll be sure to link it up as well. Let me ask you my final question that I ask everybody who comes on the podcast. Yep. What is the one takeaway, the one thing that law enforcement officers can do that's going to make a difference in their personal lives?
Have a plan to get out of it. You know what I mean? I think that's a true thing. It hurts me inside. It breaks my heart when I go around veteran officers that are looking at leaving and they talk about going to Walmart and being a greeter. Right. And I hear that all the time. That really hurts because I'm like, dude, you have so much talent. Do you know what your skill set is right now? So that's what I would tell people, police officers, to be better on the personal side is be better on the professional side. So like, find what it is you love about this career. For me, I loved jujitsu. I loved coaching. Then how do I do that outside? Well, I'll own a gym. I'll create a gym and I'll build a gym so I can coach and do that right. But it's the skills I got within police work to help me over there. So if you love car crashes, well, get really good at it and then go work for an insurance company or create your own, right? Like there's so many, our skill set is so diverse and so in demand in the private sector. If we only take a minute to go, what is it I really like and what do I want to do next? Yeah. And then I would just add, Wayne, is if you're supervising officers or you're around officers that are talking about what's coming next, that shouldn't be a shameful talk in law enforcement like it is.
I agree.
Right? Like almost every fireman I know has a side hustle, lawn business, cement, and that's kind of expected because their schedule works it. But you have a cop that says, hey, I'm thinking about maybe going to be a realtor, or I'm thinking about going to this. We almost shame them for having ideas outside police work.
Yeah.
But we all know at some point our career has to end. It should end.
Yep. So
what are we going to do next? And I think to wrap it all up, to be better at home, you got to know, when do I end? When do I end and where do I go to next? Would help you in that front.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And I know we talked a little bit about that offline, but that's exactly, I couldn't agree with you more. So I really appreciate that. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
LinkedIn's really good for me. Jerrod Hardy, I'm on there. I do a lot on LinkedIn. I have websites, teamhardy.net for the law enforcement stuff, or the onpurposepodcast.com for all the podcast stuff.
Perfect. Jerrod, I really appreciate it. This hour flew by, but I really appreciate your time. It's been a blast talking with you.
Wayne, it's been my pleasure. I can't get that one out. And I want to just, again, thank you for the work you're doing in the community and the stories you're sharing. And you never know which episode's going to find the right person at the very right time. So thank you for putting it out there.
Thank you, Jerrod. I appreciate that. And I couldn't agree more. So that's why we do it every day. You have a great one.
You as well. Thank you.
Thanks. So thank you all for watching or listening to this week's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Every episode has full show notes, links, all the good stuff, pictures, more information than what you get just in the blurb of the show notes on whatever platform you're watching this. So be sure to go to ontheblueline.com, ontheblueline.com. Click through to the show notes tab, or you can just go ontheblueline.com/show notes. And on there, you're going to get everything about every episode that we've released. And I really appreciate you watching, and thank you. None of this would be possible without you, the listeners. So that is all for today. Don't forget that I'll see you hopefully next Monday in Morning Roll Call. Yes, those are coming back. So hopefully next Monday in Morning Roll Call, and then the next Thursday in the interview room with another great episode with another great guest. So in the meantime, I'm going to see you out there on the Blue Line.